soil beta is about mineralization. It's about making sure that things turn over. I mentioned it briefly, predator-prey relationship. Here's another reason why I like living mulches. Because now I have all these different roots growing in there. I don't care about above ground canopy. I want below ground canopy. I want that whole soil profile filled with roots. And I want different kinds of roots. Because I want to get this mineralization going. I want that nitrogen to be released when the plant needs it. I want phosphorus there. I want sulfur there. I want micronutrients there when the plant needs it next. So I want to take advantage of these beautiful little creatures, the protozoa. So I'm going to have good structure because I'm not tilling very much anymore. Now, somebody asked me yesterday, Dwayne asked me yesterday, said, well, because Dwayne Smith was part of our original experiments at Lethbridge. And I said to him, now knowing what I know, I'm pretty sure that I can do no-till without perennial weeds for at least 5 years, continuous cropping. And I hope that I can go longer than that. I'm not dedicated to having never tilling, because I work with a lot of people that do potatoes. But I think we can mitigate that and we can, rebuild the soil structure because there's a lot of resiliency in there once we start. So that's where we want to go next. Okay. And this is an important, this is in Malawi, and I do a lot of work in Africa. And you really want to make the residue last. It's about keeping the soil covered, feeding your livestock. Now I put this in because there's another little problem here. This farmer, she pulls the stalks out, takes the corn cob off, stacks that up, and then she takes up all the corn red stalks and takes them away, uses them for bedding, and then in the spring before they plant, they go out and they put all the corn stalks that are left out in the ground again, because they know the importance of residue. The problem is, here, is that the termites, they're below ground residue managers, who are very important for nitrogen mineralization. If they don't keep a cover crop, if we don't keep a cover crop, like a living mulch on the ground, and keep building up dead residues, then the termites start felling the corn. They fell it. They don't eat green material. They fell the corn stalks so that they dry out so they can consume them. So it's like having beavers in there. So what we're trying to do is always keep the ground covered, even in the dry season, and keep having the residues and keep piling them up, so that we can have it. So that's the idea. Keep the soil covered, build the populations, keep the nutrient mineralization going so we can keep things up to speed. Next. This is also why I grow things in between the rows, because if I can have better rooting, and as I progress in this system, I start to have real soil structure. And when roots can grow super fast, it means that we can actually, you can see I left the translation on there for you. We can actually start to have better soil structure. Roots make better soil structure. So we can recover from a whole bunch of tillage pretty quickly. We can start building soil structure. We can start taking advantage of mineralization just by having cover crops and not tilling them in. So then the next question is, well, if we're not tilling them in, mow them, forage them, whatever, but take advantage of this. Next. And you can see and the next. You can see what the soil looked like before we started growing, and then as we go, we started to have real soil. That's the kind of thing we want to look at next. Earthworms love canola. They just love it. And inside there is Phacelia. I don't know how many people know Phacelia. Does anybody here know about Phacelia? Yeah, Phacelia is a native plant for weeds. And when we're growing potatoes, I've got seed potato growers in Montana now, and we actually, what we're doing is throughout the field, and it depends on the farmer how many rows it is, but it can sometimes be 10 rows of potatoes. We actually grow a strip of Phacelia and various calendulas and some other flowers in there, so that we keep the pollinators. Because oftentimes we pollinate around the field, but we don't actually go through the field, and most of these insects We do this in corn as well. I've got, yes, people in Kansas and Nebraska with irrigation growing flowers as a cover crop between their corn rows. And it's working brilliantly. And at night, all we just see is the sky over these corn plants is just dragonflies and lacewings, and it's fabulous. And we just are not spraying insecticides, because the one thing that I'm kind of really fighting against is the use of insecticide right now. And so we're really trying to find ways to reduce the use of insecticide and actually rid ourselves of it if we can. And so one of the ways to do this is to grow pollinators, but these things still have better roots. So we're getting the rooting, we're getting the pollination, and what we can do with plants is outstanding. And we just need to take advantage of their properties. Next. Chlorophyll content. Oh. How are we seeing our flowers? Actually, I have a really nice little drill. It's a 4-row that they use in the vineyards. And so because we want to minimize potatoes are a pretty crazy crop. So we want to still make money, but so we use a little 4-row drill that they use in the vineyards, and we just pull it through and we put our seeds just down that way. You can blow them down, but if we seed them just really, just sort of surface seed them or pack them. If you're going to broadcast them, then we pack them after. We have a roller, we broadcast at the front, and yeah, we broadcast at the front, and then we roll behind. So that's how we see the flowers. Yeah. Flower. Oh, we are seeding calendula, Visalia, crimson clover, Persian clover. I really like Persian clover. We're also seeding cosmos, and some people are seeding some other flower, just sort of kind of what they can get their hands on. I don't seed a lot of mustard because mustard bolts really quickly, and I don't want things that are really bolting quickly. I want things that actually are going to keep flowering the whole time. The calendulas we really like, just because they seed and then they just keep coming up all the time. They're not competitive, so that's the other thing. I'm trying not to have competitive things at the same time, so that I don't have weed control issues, and I don't have these things taking over, because it's all about really marrying it's all about finding compatibility and making sure that I'm not out-competing my economic crop. I want the other things, but I don't want to out-compete. I will use buckwheat as well. Buckwheat has, we just have to watch buckwheat a little bit. There are lots of different varieties. I also use fava beans. And I really like fava beans because they're early in the season. They're the only bean that likes it cold and wet, so I will use fava beans a lot. But I also grow fava beans. I like them as a cover crop. I put them in a lot of my mixes. And I'll show you why as we go to the next slides. That just gives you an idea of what we need for mycorrhiza. Your potatoes, your root crops, carrots, all of them require mycorrhiza. Most people don't know that. In fact, potatoes do a whole lot better, the seed potatoes actually do a whole lot better when we actually are using the mycorrhiza. It's really important, and that allows us to take advantage of the pseudomonads, which are also important for that tuber and protecting it from scab heads. This is David Brandt, and David Brandt is in Ohio. He's halfway between Columbus and Lancaster, Ohio. He's been no-tilling for a very long time, and he lives next door to the largest clay pot factory in the United States. That's because he is on yellow clay. He changed his soil type. In 20 years, he's changed his soil type to loam using various combinations of cover crops. And he's very proud of that fact. And nobody can, I can remember when we were trying to get Ohio State out there to verify this, and the scientists are going, no, there's no way that ever can happen. It doesn't happen. And then lo and behold, they went out there and dug pits all over his place, and he's a no-tiller, so you're going to dig pits, and they dug way too 3 pits, but he's left them anyways. And they just went, my gosh, you've actually changed your soil type. And so now if you look at the soil survey, you can actually see David Brand's farm because it has a different soil type than everybody else around it. So, and now the nutrients flow, he's not using, he uses these soil unit tests to make sure where he is, because then he'll add more legumes into his cover mixes and stuff if he's missing out on nitrogen. And, he's right at the top of the chart, and he's mineralizing about 70 pounds of nitrogen an acre. We're putting more carbon in to try and balance that out. Next. Well, the rhizosphere, it's all about rhizosphere processes. That's what we're doing. Next. It's about roots. When we do the cover crops, when we interseed, it's always about roots. Next. We're trying to increase the soluble organic carbon. There are so many different carbon fractions, but plants feed the rhizosphere. They all have, each plant has its own signature, and it leaks out amino acids, organic acids, and carbohydrates, and it's sending a signal out to all the animals that are around it and all the bacteria that's saying, here, I want a beneficial rhizosphere, and it's bringing it in. Every plant gets ET in the rhizosphere, Bacillus thuringiensis, because they need it. It stops them from being grazed. That's why it went into corn, because of the way it's doing. I'm going to mention one thing here because I know Jonathan Lundgren, who's an ARS entomologist at South Dakota State, would want me to do this. The next stacking of corn will be with the respiratory inhibitor, and we should all stand against it. And if you aren't scared by me, the word respiratory inhibitor, you should be. That's something we don't want. That means stop breathing. And if you thought BT was bad, then just imagine what stop breathing is about. So just bear that in mind when we go to the next stage. Okay, roots. How to compete with those weeds under no-till. Plant to temperature, folks. If it's too cold, plant cold things. Flax, by the way, doesn't like the soil really cold. Do not plant your flax when it's really cold. Plant that at the end of everything. Plant your wheat and your peas and your canola, and make sure that your cold stuff goes first, and then plant your flax at the very end. If you're planting corn, don't think you can plant corn in soils that are 55 degrees, around 12 to 15 degrees Celsius, because it doesn't work. You don't want your plant roots sitting there in the cold. They'll get diseased and everything else. You want them to grow fast. They grow fast, look what happens. If it's too hot, that's not good either. So, these are things that are really important. This is not old, this is old stuff, but it's stuff that we need to know. Next. You want, daikon radishes. There are lots of different kinds. Buy the cheapest one. I know that Steve's not going to like me saying that about tilgradish, but cheap is okay. Jackhammer is deep-rooted, nitro is deep-rooted, they're all daikon radishes. They have similar properties. I'll say that I don't like the groundhog so much because it breaks into branches, and I